Welcome to Connections. So glad to see so many people here. It's been a couple, 3 years. Really appreciate you coming here. It's great to have this audience, this enthusiasm, this energy in a session. With that, let's get started. This is a breakout on what's new in PolicyCenter. If you're looking for claims or billing, you're in the wrong area, but if you're interested in policy, this is where it's at. I'm Scott Medberry. I'm a product manager at Guidewire, and I've got a couple colleagues with me here.
And I'm Larry Seelig, also a product manager at Guidewire.
And I'm Brad Kahn, also a product manager at Guidewire.
A recurring theme. So, the traditional safe harbor statement. We're going to be talking about future-looking events. The future can change. We want to adapt and help you succeed with it as it changes. Okay, agenda for this next 45 minutes. A little bit on vision and strategy. Going to spend quite a bit of time talking about the recent developments, the last release, and maybe a little about the release before that. Talk a bit about roadmap, and then open it up for Q&A. So, pretty simple agenda. Start with the vision. So, there's 4 things that we want to talk about there as changes coming at you that we want to help you with. In particular, distribution channels. We know that that is a recurring change for you, whether it's being embedded insurance or being able to deal with millennials and post-millennials and being able to do Twitch and tweets and emails and SMS and whatever and however they want to be addressed and captured and talked to and communicated with. You need to expand your vocabulary, expand your distribution net, expand your fishing net out there to capture and entertain and enthuse your potential customers. There's also new risks, differentiating risks, things that are changing in time here on risks. Some of them are new, right? Cyber is relatively new. Some of them occur very infrequently, like pandemics, but you have to deal with those. Some of them are gradual, but they're continuing to cause you issues. Things like climate change that are a gradual process, but we're starting to see a lot more forest fires, a lot more property damage, et cetera, and you gotta adapt to that. Some of it is wars in other regions. You're not expecting to see wars in regions. All these things are variables that are being thrown at you that you have to deal with. There is a bit of a bright light in that there's new ways of analyzing those risks coming out there. It used to be reams and reams of data that you could look at. Now it's terabytes and petabytes and exabytes of data that you can leverage to better assess that risk, understand the likelihood of that risk, the scale or extent of that risk, and help you tune the policy to what the insured needs and be able to better accept the right risks and pass on the risks that are less acceptable to you. In addition, there's the ever-evolving set of ecosystem out there. The fintechs are out there. You want to be able to leverage them for their specific expertise, right? Whether it's a specific data set that they're really good at or being able to help you get access a niche market or specific workflows that they can help you with. Being able to leverage those extends your reach, makes you things that you don't have to build out initially, but you can leverage in there, and Guidewire wants to help you through our partner ecosystem be able to access them. So, those are some of the challenges out there. How we want to help you with this, we characterize it in 3 areas. Product design, meaning create the insurance product, and then of course you want to sell the insurance product, and then once you sell the insurance product, you'd like the customer to have a wonderful experience with that as you continue them through and renew their policies, et cetera. On the product design side, there's Advanced Product Designer. I don't think I need to say much more about that. If you've attended Guidewire the last 3-4 years, you know about Product Designer, net new products, way to develop it. We also have some more recent things around the Guidewire GO libraries as well as the traditional SBT libraries to give you that jump start into lines of business that maybe you haven't accessed before, to give you a starting or a head start as far as the implementation on that. On the differentiated experience side, I want to talk just a second about how we can help the underwriter differentiate the experience for you, whether it's submission intake and being able to consume that information faster, more accurately, et cetera, and get a response back to the submission request faster, or an underwriting workbench a little bit further out. But what we're talking about there is giving that underwriter all the tools right at their fingertips to be able to quickly process, provide the information, make quick decisions so that the insured gets that feeling that you care, that you're concerned, that you're coming back to them in a very, very timely manner with feedback on that. And then if we go forward into things like operational efficiency, policy and billing, that's always been their sweet spot, right? Helping you be very efficient in what you do. We're also starting to embed more analytics into things. We talked about things in the keynote before about things we can leverage, meaning data compiled across various organizations to be able to leverage that to help you with operational efficiency, but also just tying in analytics at the right point in the decision process, right? Whether it's being able to get better retention for your customers, or making a better decision on an underwriting issue, or part of the workflow where you say, hey, maybe there's an upsell opportunity or something like that. Predictive analytics at that right point can make a big difference for you, and it can provide your operational efficiency. So with that, I'm going to stop talking about vision, and we're going to start talking about what we've done recently, and Larry's going to kick us off on that.
Thanks, Scott. All right, I'm going to tell you all about submission intake. Before I do that, I think I need to define what submission intake is, because some of you may not have heard me speak last year at Connections. So just to set the ground here, what submission intake is first of all an add-on for PolicyCenter on Guidewire Cloud. And it's a cloud-based service as well as an embeddable micro app built in our Jutro web application framework. And the picture here on the upper right-hand corner depicts submission intake, and in particular the blue box is kind of portraying the pieces that are part of submission intake. As you can see, it leverages our long-standing app reader microservice. That's what does the sort of raw OCR conversion of incoming documents. And it's a microservice, so it has APIs that you can call. For example, if you wanted to call it not only from PolicyCenter, but if you wanted to call it, say, to do email polling, you could do that because it has these REST APIs available. And it's a Jutro micro app that's embeddable. So for starters, we make it available out of the box, embedded in PolicyCenter, but you could also embed it in Producer Engage or another agent experience of your own. So that's what submission intake is. What does it do? It takes in ACORD and other documents, related documents, as well as carrier loss runs, and I'll talk a bit more about that in a second. And it converts them into data that can be then used to create policies and pre-fill them with all that data inside PolicyCenter. So the benefits of submission intake are really enabling efficient, accurate, faster intake of submissions, and thereby response to your distribution channel. So you can get responses out faster to the distribution channel and win more business. And what's really great about it is that it's easy to enable. It's a cloud-based capability that is more of something that you turn on and less of a heavy implementation project. We've done a lot of work over the past year that I'll talk about to really make it easier than ever for you to enable submission intake. So now with that backdrop, I just want to go into what we've done this year. So submission intake was introduced at Connections last year as an EA early access capability. And we spent the better part of this year working with our EA customers to perfect it, make sure it's ready to be generally available. And we're very excited to say today that it is generally available. And it adds support for all standard commercial lines of business or major standard commercial lines. Last year, when we came here, we were demonstrating workers' compensation and BOP, but now we also have support for commercial auto, general liability, commercial property, umbrella, and inland marine. And most importantly, we have out-of-the-box pre-built mappings for 5 SBT or standard-based template lines of business. This means that for those lines of business, the mapping's pre-built and the implementation lift, if you will, is as light as possible. We also even have support for a couple of Guidewire GO products, general liability and commercial property, if you're using those as your starting point. What else have we done? Well, we've added support to take a single ACORD document and create multiple policies. So this is very important if you're a multi-line carrier. Obviously, when you get a document in, it's not going to be a monoline document. It's going to have all of the lines of business that the agent's requesting, and you can create multiple policies in PolicyCenter from that. And this includes creating package policies as well. Something else we've worked on this year with one of our EA customers is to make submission intake embeddable, ready to be embedded in Producer Engage. That's still some implementation work, but we've added all the functionality needed to support that embedding. And finally, we've got an initial release where we're now supporting over 40 carrier loss runs, and we can ingest those loss runs and land that data into the prior losses area in the risk analysis tab of PolicyCenter. And so with that, let me give you a very brief demonstration of some of the submission intake capabilities that I was just describing. So first of all, if you have submission intake enabled, you'll see on your desktop a new left nav item for uploaded ACORD documents. Here you can see a list of the documents that have been uploaded that need to be reviewed before they land their data in PolicyCenter, and you can also initiate a new upload. You can also do uploads in the context of an account in PolicyCenter as you traditionally create submissions today, but we're going to do it from this Uploaded Accord Documents page. I've initiated an upload. It creates a new entry in the table. Let's go take a quick look at that document. It's a 31-page multi-line Accord document. In this case, it's got 6 different lines of business: auto, liability, inland marine, et cetera. And this is actually a relatively small document for this many lines of business. If we go back to the desktop here, we can see it's still in progress, but I had previously uploaded this document, so we can take a quick look at it. And this is the Accord Document Review page, where you can see any issues that were found in that document that need to be resolved before the data can be landed in PolicyCenter. You see the structure of the document on the left side. Any fields that need attention are highlighted with red badges, and you can drill into those in this document-centric user interface and fix any problems. So here, we got 2 checkboxes for the combined single limit and the split limits, which is not what we expect. We expect 1, so we can fix that. We can also see, by clicking on any field, where the data was extracted from inside the document. And we can't yet complete the review process because there's still some required fields remaining, so let's drill into that. We'll go into the rating information for workers' comp, and we can see the first orange field, which indicates low confidence, because I had mucked with this PDF beforehand to add some cross-through on that value so that the system didn't have confidence. So we can fix that field, and now that badge goes away, and we have one more required field, in this case a class code that was not found in the PolicyCenter class code table. We'll go do a search for grading, since we didn't find 6217. This is all hooked up to PolicyCenter through Cloud APIs. We'll find the grading class code, and now we can complete the review process. Since we didn't select the account up front, the system is going to now search for the agency using the information on the Accord document. We can pick the producer code. It found the account by searching on the FEIN and/or the insured name that were inside the document. If it didn't, we could create a new one, and it lists all the products that are applicable based on the lines that it found in the document. Finally, we can say create submissions, and with the magic of edited video, they instantaneously appear, and we can take a look inside one of them. And this is the commercial auto, the CA7 SBT, and we can see that all the vehicles that were on the Accord form and all of their data have been uploaded into PolicyCenter. So hopefully that gives you a pretty good idea of what submission intake can do. And with that, I'll pass it to Brad.
Thanks, Larry. Hopefully I can make rating in the cloud as exciting. I want to talk to you today about rating. Rating in GWCP is our next evolution of rating. We started with RTM embedded, and now we've come to this point. When we set out to design the product, we had to come up with a vision. And what we want to do is become one of the most powerful and responsive pricing tools to meet all your complex and dynamic needs. So what's that mean? Like, what are the features that we're trying to bake in to make that happen? Well, performance is always, the first thing that you think about when you talk about rating. So we want to be able to scale not just vertically, but also horizontally, which means large policy graphs, as well as dealing with peak demand time. The next thing, we want to make sure that AI is a key part of the solution. And we don't mean just part of the rating piece, where you could do, non-regulated market, black box rating. We're also talking about pricing journey and having pricing tools and going directly from the pricing tools through into the rating ecosystem, being able to do efficient dislocation analysis, being able to do modeling for your rates and stuff. So we're working closely with the Predict group within Guidewire, and we're building tools out for that. The next part, as we develop out this new rating solution, we're really focused on developer experience. In RTM, it was very much a single developer process. Now we've moved into a truly collaborative environment. And what we're doing is check in, check out for rates, sharing. Everything is now multi-user. And of course, last but not least, we want the rating engine to be open. And when I say that, I don't mean just APIs to execute. We're actually creating a whole ecosystem of APIs that will allow you to publish rate content into into the rating engine. And what's that let you do? Well, content providers now will eventually one day be able to push stuff in. So that includes our SBT group. It includes our actuarial group with the actuarial workbench tools they're working on, and other tools, and especially unit testing tools. So with that said, I just wanted to give you a quick, brief glimpse where we came from, where we're going to. So the diagram on the left represents the embedded PolicyCenter RTM. That was where we started a few years back, around version 7. The right-hand side represents the new system, which is a combination of 2 separate microservice apps. They're fully multi-tenanted. One is the design time. That's what we're calling the rating workbench. That's where you'll design your rating components, and you'll actually be able to deploy right from within the workbench. And then the second piece of it is the runtime. And we have a whole separate microservice container for the runtime. You'll notice on the left, I've crossed a few things out. GOSU is going away, so it won't be part of the new rating engine strategy. We're also getting rid of some other things like parameters. So the first thing I thought I'd mention is this new concept of rate plans. Rate plans in the existing world of RTM, you used to have to write a lot of code in GOSU. You did stuff like rate capping and cupping and all your complex logic, cost massaging, some workflow. You know, you would put all that logic in the GOSU rating engine. And what we've done is we've gotten rid of that completely, and we're phasing in this new component that's actually a first-class rating component now. So it's fully versioned and everything. And it's called rate plans, and that's going to be the replacement for your rating engine. And that'll be the spot where everything lands in the future to start the rating journey. And then rate plans will be responsible for calling rate books and rate routines and so on. The next thing I wanted to call out, we're replacing, you used to be able to access directly the policy schema. Now we've got this mashup called the quote schema, and it's actually got everything that you need to be able to rate, or at least almost everything. I mean, there's still things like real-time credit scores and that you may want to call out for, but the quote schema is going to contain historical data, cost data, everything that you need so that rating can truly become stateless. And then the other thing to mention is we used to share the database with PolicyCenter for design time and runtime rating. That is no more. We have our own storage mechanisms now. And one of the exciting components that we're actually putting in is called rate publishing. Rate publishing is going to allow you to package your components. So in the existing world, you used to package by rate book. Now you're going to be able to actually package your components and push them up to an environment with the click of a button. And it's going to have approval flows and stuff associated with it. So what's that mean? Well, that means that you can go and deploy your package to UAT, and if there's an approval flow with it, 2 other people may have to vote yes before it finally gets promoted and automatically published. And then there's some other components that I wanted to also call out. Unit testing is brand new. It'll be coming in the next few releases. Unit testing is going to be a first-class citizen now, so you'll be able to put unit testing data in with your rating components. This is really important because in the past, you used to have to develop your own testing strategies and whatnot, and everyone came up with their own stuff. Now we're going to make that part of the ecosystem. And finally, worksheets. Everyone loves worksheets when you use rating, but the problem with worksheets was that they were never machinable. So when you wanted to pass them to downstream to analyze along with your quote data and stuff for your analytics, it was very difficult to do. So what we're doing is redoing worksheets so that they're data-driven first, and then we're going to build view layers on top. So you'll be able to digest your worksheets, and you'll also be able to provide views for maybe underwriters and brokers and whatnot. Now, I've got a live demo. It's a little scary. It wasn't working a few minutes ago. So, so I apologize in advance, and hopefully the buttons click. I just want to give you a quick sneak preview. So this is just meant to be really a quick preview of where we're at with the rating workbench. So the very first component that we moved in is that concept of rate plans. So today, we're still a little bit hybrid. We're pre-EA, so we're a little bit hybrid in that you deploy rate books, rate formulas, rate tables in the existing RTM, and then we read those and deploy them in the cloud. That's eventually, with this next release coming up, going to move away, and we're going to have everything in this rating workbench. But for this release, we've started with rate plans because they're a new concept. So what I just wanted to show you on the UX was a few things. Now, it's not too exciting yet because we have a lot to build out, but it's pretty cool because it does work. I wish I could show you a full end-to-end demo, but not yet. So what I'm going to do is just a quick search. One of the interesting things to note, all the components in here now are actually indexed in a search engine called Elasticsearch, so everything is super fast. And one of the important things for us is to make sure that you can get access to what you need efficiently so you're not fumbling and stuff. So we've got lots of opportunity for mix and match searching, and we've got this concept of folders now. And we think that we're going to actually make folders part of the deployment strategy as well. But folders allow you and your organization to basically design your rate components and put them in folders and keep them organized, and eventually you're going to be able to apply security to folders so that your homeowner's team and your auto team may not be able to touch each other's components and stuff. This is the actual rate plan, how it looks. It's kind of a flat screen right now, but one of the key things, we have the ability to check in and check out stuff. Let me just grab one here. And my button has disappeared. I warned you. But what we can do is check in, check out, and actually this ratebook zip is the payload for the rating stuff. And what we do now is we can actually work in Studio. The very first version of this is deployed using Java. So we have a sort of a multi-pronged strategy. What we wanted to do was leverage Java to start for the rating components and their logic. And then we're layering on top a UX, business-driven UX. And I'll talk about some of that stuff in the roadmap. So that's the best I can do for the demo stuff.
Okay.
So I'll hand it back to you.
Yep, thank you, Brad. So switching gears, we're off of rating now. I want to talk for a second about high volume coding. You maybe saw it on the main stage. We've gone general availability with high volume coding. What high volume coding does is it's a solution to help you address new channels, specifically aggregator and comparator channels. If you want to access them, as you likely know, they can give you very high volumes, right? There's a lot of people that are going to be looking, and you'll be part of the people that will be giving them quotes back. Super high volumes, right? It's not like what you're dealing with now. It can be tens of millions of quotes a year. It can be hundreds of millions of quotes per year. We've got somebody out there we know that does 800 million quotes a year. Lots of quotes, depending on your business, depending on your geography, et cetera. Also, those quotes tend to be lower quality a little bit, meaning you've got a large number of quotes coming in, but a lot of people looking, right? You've got people that are checking to see and stuff like that, and so you'll get a very low bind ratio typically. So it's large volumes, low success rates typically. What high volume coding does, which is an add-on to PolicyCenter Cloud, is it provides some things to help you handle those loads and some of the data. Meaning there's a separately provisioned set of application server nodes specific to the high volume coding channel. So you've got the dedicated system of record application server nodes and the high volume coding application server nodes. We have a multi-tenant quote storage service to store those high volumes of quotes outside of the PolicyCenter implementation, as well as we provide an example line of business that you can map your line of business to how it works with high volume quoting to give you sort of a running start on that. Benefits, obviously scale, right? Part of it is definitely scale, 10 million, 100 million quotes per year, beyond. Part of it is resiliency and isolation. You want to have good quality of service for your existing customers with your existing distribution channels and stuff, and you want to have good service for your new channel, your high volume aggregator comparator channels, Separate hardware for each gives you the ability to control each separately. Quote storage obviously is part of that story as well. Also, many of the quotes coming in are not only low bind ratio, but a lot of times they're semi-anonymous. People come in and they don't give you their true name, et cetera. And so you don't necessarily want that information in your PolicyCenter system of record because PolicyCenter also, you've got a lot of integrations, right? And you might send it downstream to other systems, or might be doing a search in PolicyCenter and find 5,000 John Smiths on there and 4,900 of them are bogus, right? So there's resilience and isolation in this approach. We've also taken approach where we've got made it a little bit easier, meaning we wanted to have a single point for updating admin and product model data. You change either of those and it flows through both sets of application servers, both the system of record as well as the high volume quoting side. So I got a short demo to show this. Unlike Brad, who took it to going live, I've got a canned version. If you want to see the live one, come to the demo theater later today, and I'll be doing it live there. 3 examples here, 3 scenarios. First, the customer coming in and hitting the aggregator, getting the quote back, and going into the quote store. Second part of this is dealing with the customer coming back and say, hey, I'm interested in that quote, and pulling that information from the quote store and finding that. And the third one is customer saying, hey, I am interested in this, let's bind and issue it, and issuing it into the PolicyCenter database. So with that, we'll start a demo, and I'm going to use an API client called Postman for this, for the first part, to represent the API request coming in, and you see an example request here on the left-hand side, where information about the quote you're asking for there. It's a personal auto quote there. The insured, and get down here a little bit farther, is Clark Kent. You can see other information about the particular quote coming in. So we'll send that across the high volume quoting application server. Goes across, and it's going to come back with the policy information. It's also going to come back with, or the submission information, but also going to store it in the quote storage. You can see various information about it, about Clark's policy. $723 total premium. Great. So that represents the first phase of that, the first step of the first scenario. So let's now go to PolicyCenter, and we're going to go in there. And we've got now, with high volume quoting, a new search screen here, and it's one for quotes, because we're going to be able to search across both the HVQ quote store as well as the PolicyCenter database. Because Clark coming in here might not know where he accessed you and got the quote. He doesn't know necessarily that it's an aggregator site or if he's doing a direct digital to consumer site or whatever else. So this is going to start search for Clark across both of them, and it looked like Clark has actually used both channels. He got a couple HVQ quotes in the quote store and one in the PolicyCenter. So in this particular case, Clark, it probably isn't as interested in the $1,600 quote. He's going to take the one from the high volume quoting, and we'll take that one and convert that one to a submission. So when you convert to a submission, it's going to pull that information from the quote store and bring it into your system of record. And the first thing to do, just like Larry talked about submission intake, let's match that up to an account, right? So we've got a Clark Kent in the database, and we could either use that Clark Kent, or if we wanted to, we could create a new account for Clark. But in this particular case, let's say this Clark Kent is the Clark Kent we're all interested in. This is the one, maybe he's got a homeowner's policy with you already, he's looking for personal auto. So we've matched it up now. If you'd had an issue with the quote, the normal validation rules would still apply, or an underwriting rule or issue, if it came up, would still apply. And you'd see it here and you could work through that. In this particular case, the quote is clean, it's acceptable to you. So if you wanted to, and if Clark was interested in it, you could bind and issue it. So let's go ahead and do that. Bind an issue, click through the site, and we can go into the policy, and you can see a bound and issued one with a total there between the two is $723. So Clark is good to go. That ends that demo. Switching gears. We've been going for the last couple of releases on improving nimbleness, and the way we're doing that is the following. If you go a couple years back, what Guidewire did is we shipped PolicyCenter with 8 out-of-the-box lines of business, which is good, gets you a starting point, et cetera. But if you don't need all those lines of business, it just makes the build we give to you, it's all embedded in there, bigger, right? And if we start taking those out-of-the-box lines and moving them to content, they're still available to you, but they're not stuffed in there into what we deliver to you. Then you get the option to add them back as you need them, but you get a benefit of, hey, the file size, the jar files are smaller, compile and recompile times are a little bit better, server start times are a little bit better. Obviously, you add back content, some of those numbers move up a little bit, but it gives you a benefit, particularly for the the developer, it's a cleaner build. Not only that, but at implementation time, typically what you had to do was hide those out-of-the-box lines of business you didn't want to use. You no longer have to hide them. You just add in, whether it's a Guidewire GO library, an APD library, or one of the out-of-the-box libraries that are still available to you, you add that in there as you need it. Continue to work on PolicyCenter APIs. This is a journey for us. We're continuing to build out completeness as well as flexibility in the last release. A couple things I want to talk about on the completeness side. Prior loss information, we're being able to pull that across via API, as well as policy compare. Example of this, you've got a midterm endorsement. You want to compare that endorsed policy versus the prior version of it so that you have an understanding of what has changed between the two. We now have APIs to pull that information out. On the flexibility front, complex composite calls. The biggest single thing there is multi-version support and a composite API. Think you want to make a good, better, best type of quote. Now with multi-version, you can do that because you can create multiple versions of that same quote inside a PolicyCenter, all as part of one composite API call. There's also use cases where you want to defer validation, and the image to the right gives you an illustration of that. With a standard submission, you have a process sort of like this. You start the submission, you select coverables, and then you validate. You select coverages, and then you validate. You select questions, and then you validate. A lot of validation in there. A lot of times you maybe want to iterate on it before you hit the validation step. So we're providing another option for submissions where you start the submission, you select the coverables, select the coverages, select the questions, and maybe you fiddle around with it a little bit, and then you validate. You still have to validate. You still have to have a good, solid policy in there, but we push that validation down so that you can do more steps up there up front. And then asynchronous calls. Classic example of this is you want to trigger a batch process via an API. It might take more than half a second to come back to you with a batch process. And so you want to be able to come back later. We have a new version of an API call that's an asynchronous one that you can trigger and you get callback information so you can find out the process of that job later. Okay. We're also working on reducing implementation costs around, particularly around lines of business and integrations. We want to talk about some region-specific integrations and lines of business to reduce and simplify our cost. Total cost of ownership is big, and so we want to try to reduce that for you. 5 examples. The London market, we have now enhanced transactional support inside of policy for cancellations, midterm endorsements, reinstatements, and full-term rewrites. Australia, integration with Australian Business Register into Contact Manager, and then that flows into PolicyCenter, so you can get that information directly from a trusted source. In Japan, we have the Japan new pet product, and it's the first multi-language product we've got in the Go library. In the Americas, we've been working with AAIS to create a new inland marine product in the Go libraries, as well as in global, we've got a new global pets product for your animal friends worldwide. Roadmap, and it's back to Larry.
Thanks, Scott. Just want to say that all those API changes were absolutely essential for the success of submission intake, so both the robustness and some of those new APIs. Thank you. All right, real briefly, I'm going to talk about the roadmap. If you want more information about submission intake, I have a session tomorrow at 1:15 across the hall, so please join me for that. I'm just going to make it really brief and talk about what's coming. I'm not going to review what we've already done. A couple things that are on the roadmap for us. The submission intake, that Accord document review user interface that you saw, right now it's sort of one size fits all because it's based on the documents itself. So you're reviewing the data in the documents. But if you're not passing that data to PolicyCenter, then maybe you don't want to see it. You want to declutter that user experience to make it faster for people to get through it so there's just less data to review. We're going to offer that as a capability that we've just started working on. We're going to continue to build out the capability to intake insurer loss runs. This is both increased content, but also doing things like enabling you to upload loss runs not as part of the initial submission intake, but after the fact into an existing PolicyCenter submission. Because we know in the business process that oftentimes agents won't submit an up-to-date loss run, and you'll have to be able to get that data in later on in the underwriting process. And finally, we're starting on something that we're calling smart spreadsheet intake or spreadsheet intake. And it's really going to give us the ability to ingest spreadsheets that we've never seen before in terms of their structure. So no longer will you have to have a spreadsheet that exactly matches the canonical format in order to get that data into PolicyCenter. If you have a schedule of vehicles that you get from an agent and it's reasonable in format, we should be able to ingest it, automatically understand what those columns are, and map it into the PolicyCenter vehicles. As we look further out, we want to do more here to enable that out-of-the-box content that I talked about, those SBT mappings, those Guidewire Go mappings, just be built into the submission intake configuration tool. I didn't have time to demonstrate that today, but that's part of the submission intake solution. We're also going to continue to expand the amount of Accord content and other content that we support, out-of-the-box mappings, perhaps for more Guidewire Go products, and additional support for additional carrier loss runs, just continuing to build this out. And lastly, we obviously want to take that new POC capability that we're working on for spreadsheet intake and make that available as an EA and ultimately a GA capability for you to take advantage of. And with that,
Thanks,
Brad?
Larry. So in Flaine and prior, we've been working really hard to sort of get a baseline product in place. So we're at the point now where we can actually support simple LOBs. We're not EA yet. We're hoping to go EA with Garmisch. But we can support simple LOBs, and this first release, this Flaine release, is really where we introduce the concept of the rating workbench and the concept of these rate plans, which replace the GoSu rating engine. As we move into Garmisch, this is going to be a busy release for us because what we want to do is lift all the components that are already in the existing RTM system and bring those over. So we start bringing over rate routines and rate tables and whatnot. We're also building out the APIs for CRUD, for the create, remove, update, delete for you non-techies. And we're continuing to round out the rating workbench. As we move into the future, into Hakuba and beyond, that's where we're going to finalize things. We hope by the end of Hakuba that we're pushing towards a GA release. And really, by then, we want to have the unit testing done, the full set of publishing and CRUD APIs fully deployed in there. And we want to be able to support your complex commercial lines, as well as starting support in Hakuba and beyond for SBTs and whatnot. Scott?
Very good. So touch on a few things in Flaine I didn't have a chance to talk about during the main part. Quote schema, Brad talked about that. We did work on the quotes on the quote service side to support that. Multi-line policies in the quote service is supported. On the integration front, I want to talk about just a second about Billing Center. Admin groups, billing account and contacts, payment plans, and return premium were all worked on, and as well as an agent experience, an EA app for APT to digital for the BOP line of business. If we look forward into our next release, looking at quote service, some enhancements there, but what I want to talk about there for just a second is underwriting rules. We want to be able to start externalizing both the creation of underwriting rules as well as the execution of those underwriting rules. Looking at the integration, continue to work on PC and BC APIs. On the Billing Center side, let's focus on that. Billing account, view my bill, and support for groups are top of mind. Developer experience, continue removing a couple lines of business out of it to keep getting the nimbleness there. Billing Center, business rule overrides, as well as then global commercial. We're going to spend quite a bit of time in Garmisch working on that. Multi-currency, commission overrides, negotiated premiums, and work on defining by class of business. If we look a little further out, then the quote service, bump and pre-fill, essentially taking quotes that aren't ready for prime time yet, don't have all the information, don't have the right information, and get it to a point where you can quote them. Being able to create events in the quote service and be able to push data that's in the quote service and not inside a PolicyCenter into Guidewire data platform. And if you look a little further out, matrix pricing, which essentially is a way of getting a single quote request in and get multiple prices out, right? Good, better, best, 3 different options for deductible levels or limit levels, et cetera, so you can get pricing and multiples from one request. On the integration front, continue to work on APIs, right? Our work is never going to be done on APIs. We're going to continue working on that. Developer experience, we want to finish out-of-box lob removal to get that to the point where we want to get it to. Billing Center, app events, and a data importer-exporter. Continued work on global commercial, in this case, ceded and accepted risks through both co-insurance and reinsurance, adding capabilities there. And then a first release of the underwriting workbench to support the needs of the middle market. Plenty of stuff for us to do. But now it's time for you to do something. If you have questions, now is the time for you to avail yourself of that. We have microphones coming around to you. If you have a question, stand up or raise your hand. I can't see it, but hopefully somebody in the back can see it.
Hi, my question is for Brad. You indicated that GOSU is going away. Does that mean PolicyCenter GOSU or just the rating?
No, I'm just talking about rating in my case.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and existing rating will still be there, and it'll still use GOSU. It's your new stuff.
The new stuff, the cloud rating, yes.
The high volume quoting solution, is that an add-on?
Yes, it's an add-on to PolicyCenter Cloud.
Okay, so it's an additional product.
Yes,
to purchase.
it went GA here today, I think.
So my question is more related to the usability. So to rate very quickly, you need to have a clear, you can say, segregation of data that is needed for rating versus the policy issuance. So is there any plan for like visual segregation of that data?
Was that a question for?
So
That's a question for me and rating side?
Oh no, it is more from the user interface. So if you look at the policy contract initial screens, all our rating and issuance data is all together at one place. So basically what happens is that people who enter the data, they end up entering the data that is not needed for the rating. So even if it is just needed for issuance, they enter the data and not all your quotes turn into issuance. So that's where the wastage of that data entry.
You want me to try?
I'm not sure I'm going to hit this question right, but we developed the mashup of data. We're calling it the quote schema, and that's really meant to be the data set that we need to rate. Now, do we use all the data points always in that schema? No, but the key is that the schema is stateless and populated, by whatever process.
So right now, the quote schema, and it's going to be extensible, but it sends current period, prior period, based on period, account information, costs, basic analytics information across, but it's extensible as well. Right now, we're sending everything of that list I just mentioned. In the future, we might get smarter about it and be able to identify just the factors that are needed for each, but we're sending it out right now for multiple services. It's not just rating, it goes out to rules execution as well. So it's sort of a superset of that information we need to be able to send out.
Okay.
One thing that will be interesting as the rating technology matures, we've developed a new concept called rating variables, and they're going to allow us to tag data. So we're actually going to be able to more finitely discover what's being actually used in the quoting process from all the noise.
Okay.
For rate testing, are you looking at running against the existing book of business, like the whole book, to see the impact on a new rate book?
So running against a whole portfolio would be more what we're hoping to have happen in the actuarial side, in the actuarial workbench with the Predict group. We're more focused on, individual policy rating, on the rating.
But the same engine could be used,
the same engine,
for both.
In fact, the execution APIs actually bypass all of Scott's layer on the quoting side, which means that if you hit the rate engine directly with the quote message, it's going to be very, very fast because it bypasses, policy sync and all that stuff that takes time to do heavy lifting.
Thank you for your attendance. Thank you for participation. Thank you for your questions and your custom. Questions for us will be up here at the end, but we have to leave in a little bit, but our contact information is on there as well. Thank you again.